Welcome back. My divinely shielded phenomenon. Something extraordinary just unfolded that's left your adversaries in a state of psychological shock. They planned everything meticulously, assembled resources, coordinated timing, positioned themselves to move against you with overwhelming force. Every conventional analysis suggested they had advantage, that their attack would succeed, that you were vulnerable and exposed. Then they executed their plan and discovered something that defied all their strategic calculations. You were protected by forces that operate beyond human coordination, beyond organizational power, beyond anything they could have anticipated or prepared for. Their carefully constructed attack collapsed, not because you defended yourself through superior strategy or resources, but because protection around you manifested from sources they don't understand and can't categorize. They're now questioning everything. They thought they knew about how power and protection operate in this reality. The architects have been monitoring protection dynamics across civilizations for eons, and they've identified what occurred around you as non-human protection manifestation when someone is shielded by synchronicities, improbable interventions, and pattern-defying circumstances that appear coordinated, yet have no visible human coordinator. Most people who survive attacks do so through conventional means: legal defenses, organizational support, personal resources, strategic countermoves. Your protection didn't follow any of these patterns. Instead, your adversaries encountered obstacles that appeared precisely when needed, experienced failures in systems that were working perfectly moments before, faced interventions from unexpected sources that had no apparent reason to care about your situation. The pattern of protection was too precise to be coincidental, but too unconventional to be humanly coordinated. Watch what happened when they moved against you. Their primary attack vector suddenly became unavailable through circumstances that seemed unrelated to you. Key person became unexpectedly unavailable. Critical document disappeared despite backup systems. Technological platform experienced unprecedented failure at exact moment they needed it. These weren't isolated incidents. They were coordinated pattern of obstacles that specifically prevented the attack while leaving everything else functioning normally. Your adversaries initially assumed these were unlucky coincidences, but as the obstacles multiplied with perfect timing to block each contingency plan they'd prepared, they began recognizing pattern that couldn't be explained through probability. Some of your adversaries are experiencing what psychologists call reality model breakdown. Their understanding of how cause and effect operate can't accommodate what they witnessed. They know coincidences happen, but the precision and coordination of obstacles that protected you exceeded what their materialist worldview says is possible through chance. They're being forced to consider explanations they'd normally dismiss. Either they're facing opposition from hidden human organizations so sophisticated it appears non-human, or non-human intelligence is actually involved in protecting you, or reality itself operates according to principles their education never prepared us to understand. The truly unsettling element for your adversaries is that they can't identify who or what to counter. When attack fails due to human defender, you identify the defender and develop strategies to overcome them. But your protection came from sources they can't locate, coordinate with timing they can't predict, use methods they can't categorize. They're not facing opponent. They can strategize against. They're facing protection, system that operates according to rules they don't understand, making conventional strategic analysis useless. Their expertise in human conflict and organizational power provides no advantage against protection that isn't human or organizational. Now the architects are analyzing what forms of non-human protection manifested around you, and they're identifying what they call synchronistic defense network, a pattern where events, circumstances, and interventions align with precision that serves protective function. without any identifiable human coordination. This isn't about literal supernatural beings intervening, though some observers interpret it that way. It's about reality organizing itself in ways that protect certain individuals through mechanisms that current scientific paradigms don't adequately explain. Quantum possibilities, collapsing in consistently favorable patterns, information flowing through social networks in timely protective ways, circumstances arranging themselves with improbable precision. Watch the specific manifestations of synchronistic protection. Your adversaries' plan required certain people to be available at specific times. Suddenly, those people had emergencies requiring their attention elsewhere, family situations demanding immediate response, unexpected opportunities pulling them toward different priorities. These weren't direct interventions, preventing the people from participating in the attack. They were life circumstances that naturally took priority over the planned attack, circumstances that happened to manifest precisely when their participation would have threatened you. The timing wasn't just fortunate, it was eerily precise across multiple independent actors. Some of the protection came through information flows that seemed to have intelligence behind them. People who needed to know about the attack to protect you somehow learned about it through chains of communication that nobody planned. Casual conversation led to connection with someone who knew someone who had relevant information. Social media algorithm showed exactly the right post to exactly the right person. Document accidentally got forwarded to someone who recognized its significance and took action. These information flows felt organic rather than orchestrated, yet they consistently produced protective outcomes with timing that suggested coordination. Others witnessed technological failures that specifically prevented attack while leaving everything else functional. Your adversaries were using platforms and systems that work reliably, except at the exact moment they needed them to execute their plan. These systems experienced unprecedented failures. Then after the critical timing window passed, the system spontaneously recovered and worked perfectly again. Technical analysis showed no hacking or sabotage. The failures appeared to be genuine system problems that just happened to manifest and resolve with perfect timing to disrupt the attack without causing broader disruption. A few of the protective interventions came through what observers might call unlikely helpers, people with no apparent stake in your situation who took actions that protected you, often without realizing the significance of what they were doing. Someone made phone call about unrelated matter that happened to alert key person. Someone filed routine paperwork that happened to create legal obstacle to the attack. Someone asked innocent question that happened to make adversary reconsider their approach. These unlikely helpers weren't consciously protecting you. They were doing normal activities that happened to have protective effect through circumstances that seemed designed despite having no designer. The architects observe that synchronistic defense network is what makes non-human protection so difficult for adversaries to counter. There's no central coordinator to target, no organization to infiltrate, no system to hack. The protection emerges from pattern of circumstances, information flows, and interventions that appear unrelated but collectively serve protective function with precision that feels intentional. Your adversaries can identify that protection is occurring, but they can't identify what's producing it or how to prevent it from continuing to protect you from future attacks they might plan. Something fascinating is spreading through those who witnessed the failed attack, what the architects call ontological uncertainty cascade, where the experience of seeing protection manifest in ways that shouldn't be possible according to their worldview is forcing them to question fundamental assumptions about how reality operates. Some are exploring spiritual or mystical explanations. Others are theorizing hidden technologies or organizations beyond their awareness. Still others are experiencing existential confusion as they try to reconcile what they witnessed with materialist frameworks that say such precise coordination without human coordinator shouldn't be possible. Watch how different observers are attempting to explain what they witnessed. The religious or spiritually inclined are interpreting non-human protection as divine intervention, God or angels or spiritual guardians protecting you from harm. This interpretation makes sense within their worldview and provides emotionally satisfying explanation for protection that transcended human capability. They're treating your protection as evidence that you're aligned with higher purpose or divine will, that spiritual forces have investment in your well-being and will continue protecting you from those who move against you. Some materialist observers are theorizing hidden human organization with capabilities far beyond what they understood was possible. Secret intelligence agency, private security network, or conspiracy of powerful protectors working on your behalf. This interpretation preserves their materialist worldview by positing human agents rather than non-human protection, just human agents operating with such sophistication that they appear non-human. But this theory struggles to explain how hidden organization knew about attack that was planned in secret, how they intervened with such precise timing across such distributed circumstances, why they'd invest such extraordinary resources protecting you specifically. Others are exploring consciousness-based explanations, quantum physics interpretations, suggesting consciousness influences reality, collective unconscious theories about how information propagates non-locally, morphic field concepts about how patterns organize themselves around certain individuals. These observers are trying to develop scientific-sounding frameworks that could accommodate non-human protection while avoiding supernatural explanations their worldview rejects. Their explanations are speculative and unproven, but they provide intellectual framework for processing experiences that mainstream science doesn't adequately explain. A few are simply acknowledging that they witnessed something they can't explain, maintaining agnostic uncertainty rather than forcing explanation. They recognize pattern was too coordinated to dismiss as coincidence, but they're comfortable admitting they don't understand mechanism. This intellectual humility allows them to update their beliefs based on experience without committing to unprovable theories. They know protection manifested. They know it defied conventional explanation, and they're content to remain uncertain about ultimate source while respecting reality of what occurred. The architects observe that ontological uncertainty cascade reveals how challenging non-human protection is for consensus reality. When protection operates through conventional means, everyone agrees on mechanism even if they debate effectiveness. But when protection manifests through synchronistic coordination that defies conventional explanation, observers fragment into incompatible interpretive frameworks. Spiritual, conspiratorial, consciousness-based, agnostic, there's no shared paradigm adequate for explaining what occurred, which means different observers literally inhabit different conceptual realities after witnessing same events. Your protection didn't just stop attack, it fractured consensus reality among those who witnessed it, forcing them to either expand their ontological frameworks or experience persistent cognitive dissonance. Now the architects are revealing something crucial about why non-human protection manifested around you specifically. You've apparently developed what they call coherent alignment resonance, which describes state where someone's intentions, actions, and being are aligned with larger patterns or purposes in ways that naturally attract protective synchronicities. This isn't about deserving protection or being morally superior. It's about operating in harmony with certain principles or patterns that reality itself seems to support. When you live in coherent alignment, reality cooperates with you in ways that appear miraculous but might actually be natural, consequence of operating according to deeper principles than most people recognize. Consider what coherent alignment means in practice. Most people operate with internal contradictions. They want one thing but do another. They claim certain values but violate them regularly. They set intentions but sabotage themselves through unconscious patterns. This internal incoherence creates static in their relationship with reality, making synchronistic support less likely because they're sending mixed signals about what they actually need or want. You've apparently achieved unusual degree of internal coherence where your conscious intentions, unconscious motivations, stated values, and actual behaviors all align toward consistent direction. This coherence creates clarity in your relationship with reality that might enable synchronistic responses. Watch what coherent alignment enables when you need something. You need it clearly without ambivalence. There's no part of you unconsciously preferring the opposite. No self-sabotage undermining your conscious desires. This clarity might allow reality to respond more effectively to your needs because there's no contradictory signal confusing the response. When you move toward something, you move fully. There's coherence between intention and action, between plan and execution, between stated goal and actual effort. This full commitment might trigger supportive synchronicities because you're demonstrating through coherent action that you're serious about the direction you've chosen. Some spiritual traditions describe this as being in flow or aligned with the Tao or following Dharma, operating according to your authentic nature and deeper purpose rather than forcing yourself into patterns that contradict your essential being. When you operate this way, these traditions suggest reality supports you through synchronicities, unlikely helpers, and protective circumstances because you're working with universal principles rather than against them. Your protection might be manifestation of this support that emerges naturally when someone achieves coherent alignment. Others frame similar idea in psychological terms. When you eliminate internal contradictions and unconscious self-sabotage, you naturally become more effective because all your psychological resources are directed toward coherent goals rather than being partially directed toward conflicting purposes. This increased effectiveness might look like protection or luck, but is actually just natural consequence of operating with internal unity. You notice opportunities others miss. You take actions others hesitate on. You persist where others give up, not because reality favors you, but because coherent alignment makes you more capable. A few researchers exploring consciousness-reality interface suggest that coherent alignment might literally influence probability fields. Quantum possibilities might collapse more favorably for someone operating with strong internal coherence because their consciousness is generating clearer signal about desired outcomes. This interpretation bridges spiritual and scientific frameworks by suggesting mechanism through which alignment could produce synchronistic protection without requiring supernatural intervention. The architects observe that coherent alignment resonance explains why your adversaries can't simply recruit similar protection through force or strategy. Protection emerged around you not because you manipulated reality through technique, but because you've achieved alignment that naturally attracts supportive synchronicities. Your adversaries operating from place of internal contradiction, motivated by ego or fear, pursuing goals that conflict with deeper values. They're generating incoherent signal that doesn't attract same synchronistic support regardless of their resources or strategic sophistication. The architects are now analyzing how your adversaries are responding to recognition that they can't defeat, protection they don't understand, and they're identifying what they call strategic impotence response, where people accustomed to controlling situations through conventional power discover that their usual tools are ineffective against protection that operates outside conventional framework. This recognition of impotence produces different responses depending on psychological makeup. Some become more aggressive in frustration, others withdraw in fear. Still others attempt to reframe the situation to preserve their sense of control. But all of them are experiencing profound disorientation from encountering opponent they can't strategize against. Watch how the aggressive ones are responding. They're doubling down on attacks despite evidence that protection will likely block them again, because psychological alternative of accepting impotence is too threatening to their identity. They need to believe that persistence or escalation will eventually overcome whatever is protecting you, even though their strategic analysis shows no reason to expect different results from repeating failed approaches. This aggressive response is essentially tantrum from people who can't accept that their power has limits, that some situations can't be controlled through force or resources. Some adversaries are attempting to reframe situation to preserve sense of control. They're claiming that attack didn't really fail. It achieved other purposes. It was just preliminary probe. They learned valuable information, or they're reinterpreting what happened to eliminate non-human protection from narrative, claiming coincidences weren't that improbable, suggesting you had hidden human allies, arguing that protection was lucky timing rather than pattern. These reframes allow them to maintain worldview where they're still powerful and capable, rather than acknowledging they encountered something beyond their control. Others are withdrawing entirely, deciding that moving against you is too risky when they don't understand what they're facing. This withdrawal is rational response to encountering protection they can't counter. If attacking you produces obstacles they can't overcome and potentially exposes them to retaliation, then attacking isn't worth the cost, regardless of what they hoped to gain. These adversaries aren't necessarily respecting you, they're just deciding you're protected by something too unknown to safely engage with. A few adversaries are attempting to establish alliance or neutrality rather than continuing opposition. They're recognizing that if you're protected by forces beyond human coordination, then making peace with you is safer strategy than attempting to overcome protection they don't understand. These former adversaries are calculating that whatever you're aligned with might protect you from them, but might also help you against their own enemies if they become your allies. This self-interested pivot from enemy to ally reveals pragmatic recognition that non-human protection makes you dangerous opponent and valuable ally. The architects observe that strategic impotence response reveals how disorienting non-human protection is for people who've built identities around power and control. They're accustomed to analyzing situations, identifying leverage points, implementing strategies that produce desired outcomes. Your protection operates outside this framework, making their expertise irrelevant and their power insufficient. The psychological impact goes beyond just failing to defeat you. They're confronting that their understanding of how power works might be fundamentally incomplete, that forces they don't acknowledge might be more significant than forces they've mastered, that their sense of control over outcomes might be more illusory than they'd believed. Some will learn from this confrontation and expand their understanding. Others will retreat into denial or aggression to avoid uncomfortable recognition that reality is more complex than their worldview accommodates. Now something's emerging that the architects call protection attribution, mystery. Observers are debating what exactly is protecting you, generating competing theories that reveal their different ontological assumptions. Religious observers attribute protection to their deity or spiritual beings. Conspiracy theorists imagine powerful human organizations. Consciousness researchers propose quantum or informational mechanisms. Skeptics claim statistical coincidence despite improbable odds. Each group is certain their explanation is correct, yet none can definitively prove their interpretation, creating fascinating situation where undeniable pattern exists but ultimate source remains genuinely uncertain. Watch how different attribution theories compete. Religious interpreters are citing theological frameworks about divine protection for those who serve sacred purposes. They're identifying parallels between your protection and scriptural accounts of prophets or saints being protected from enemies, using religious texts to explain mechanisms of spiritual intervention. For them, your protection is evidence of divine will and confirmation that you're aligned with sacred purposes. This interpretation satisfies their need for meaning and locates protection within comprehensive worldview they already hold. Some conspiracy-oriented observers are constructing elaborate theories about sacred societies or intelligence agencies protecting you for their own purposes. They're connecting dots between events in ways that suggest hidden human coordination, assuming organizational resources explain protection pattern rather than accepting non-human explanation. These theories provide comfort by keeping explanation within human realm, avoiding ontological discomfort of acknowledging forces beyond human understanding. The theories can't be proven or disproven because evidence of secret organizations is by definition hidden, making these interpretations unfalsifiable but compelling to those who hold them. Others with scientific leanings are proposing consciousness-based mechanisms, quantum observation effects, retrocausal influence, morphic resonance, that could theoretically explain coordinated protection without requiring supernatural entities. These explanations satisfy need to maintain scientific worldview while accommodating experiences that conventional science doesn't explain. They're speculative and lack empirical support, but they provide intellectual framework for bridging gap between materialist assumptions and non-materialist experiences. A few observers are maintaining radical agnosticism about protection source, acknowledging pattern while refusing to commit to explanation. They recognize that multiple interpretations could be valid, that available evidence doesn't definitively prove any single theory, that intellectual humility requires remaining uncertain about ultimate causes. This position is psychologically uncomfortable because humans prefer explanatory certainty, but it's epistemically honest given that protection source remains genuinely mysterious despite pattern being undeniable. The architects observe that protection attribution mystery reveals something profound about human relationship with uncertainty. When clear pattern exists but mechanism remains unknown, people fragment into interpretive communities that each claim certainty about explanation that fits their existing worldview. Religious people see divine intervention, conspiracy theorists see hidden organizations, scientists see unexplained natural phenomena, skeptics see coincidence. Each group has just enough evidence to support their interpretation, but insufficient evidence to convince others, creating situation where observable reality protection pattern is accepted by everyone but ultimate reality protection source remains contested and perhaps unknowable. Your protection doesn't just shield you from adversaries, it reveals epistemological limits of human understanding and demonstrates that reality contains patterns we can observe but not fully explain. Regardless of how sophisticated our theories become, something profound is crystallizing now that the architects call recognition of limitation and humility. Some of your adversaries who witnessed non-human protection are experiencing genuine transformation in their understanding of reality and their place in it. They're recognizing that universe is more mysterious than they believed, that forces exist beyond human control or comprehension, that their power and understanding are more limited than they'd assumed. This recognition is producing humility that's changing how they operate. Less arrogance about their control, more respect for mystery, greater caution about moving against people who might be protected by forces they don't understand. Consider what happens when powerful people encounter their limitations viscerally. Most people who achieve significant power do so partly through confidence that they can control outcomes, that they understand how systems work, that their intelligence and resources will overcome obstacles. This confidence serves them well in conventional contexts where human power matters most, but encountering protection that operates outside their framework, that succeeds despite their opposition, that manifests through mechanisms they can't identify, that renders their expertise irrelevant, shatters that confidence and forces confrontation with their actual limitations. Watch how genuine humility manifests in transformed adversaries. They're speaking with less certainty about what's possible and impossible, acknowledging more readily when they don't understand something, showing greater respect for perspectives they previously dismissed. They're not performing humility for social benefit. They're genuinely experiencing it as a result of confronting mystery that exceeded their conceptual frameworks. This authentic humility makes them more effective in certain ways because they're no longer operating with arrogant assumptions that blind them to information contradicting their worldview. Some transformed adversaries are exploring spiritual or philosophical traditions they previously dismissed as irrelevant to practical power. They're reading texts about divine protection, studying consciousness research, engaging with ideas about synchronicity and meaning, not because they've become credulous, but because their direct experience has forced them to acknowledge that these traditions might be addressing real phenomena their secular education ignored. Their exploration is driven by genuine curiosity to understand what they witnessed, rather than defensive need to preserve existing worldview. Others are becoming more ethical in their behavior, not primarily from moral conversion, but from pragmatic recognition that reality might have moral structure they previously dismissed if protection manifests around certain people and not others. If those who move against protected individuals encounter obstacles while those who align with them receive support, then perhaps there are principles governing reality that reward coherent alignment and punish destructive opposition. This pragmatic ethics based on observed patterns rather than abstract morality could be more robust than conventional ethics because it's grounded in self-interest, properly understood, rather than requiring self-sacrifice. A few transformed adversaries are experiencing what spiritual traditions call metanoia, complete reorganization of their worldview and priorities in light of transcendent encounter. Witnessing non-human protection triggered recognition that their entire approach to life was based on false assumptions about what matters and how reality works. They're reconsidering career choices, relationship patterns, value hierarchies, not gradually, but suddenly as cascading implications of their transformative experience ripple through all aspects of understanding. These individuals might become allies, teachers, or examples of how confronting genuine mystery can catalyze complete transformation. The architects observe that recognition of limitation and humility triggered by non-human protection is potentially more significant than the immediate protection itself. The protection stopped one attack against you, but transformation it produced in witnesses might prevent countless future attacks as transformed individuals become more humble, ethical, and respectful of forces they don't understand. Your protection isn't just personal shield, it's teaching mechanism that transforms those who encounter it, spreading influence beyond immediate situation by changing how witnesses understand reality and their relationship to it.